the Forgotten series, episode 9. So let's talk about it. Deaths. Today I got coffee with me for this epic journey of journalism of mini documentary series. The rush of caffeine. Today we're going to go over one of my longtime favorite games I used to play on the NES. But I don't think it was only on the NES. I also believe it was on the Sega Genesis, I believe, at one point. And on top of it, it has been ported. So let's just talk about what I came here to talk about. You already know the title. Y'all already know. We're talking about Earthworm Jim, baby. Where's Earthworm Jim at, baby? Come back to us, baby. That's what happens when I have caffeine. So let's get into it. Earthworm Jim is a series of side-scrolling platform games featuring an earthworm named Jim who wears a robotic suit and battles the forces of evil. The series is noted for its platforming and shooting gameplay, surreal humor, and edgy art style. 4 games was released in the series: Earthworm Jim, Earthworm Jim 2, Earthworm Jim 3D, and Earthworm Jim Menace to the Galaxy, with the first game released in 1994. That was the year I was born, by the way. The series had lain dormant for almost a decade before Gameloft remade the original game in HD for the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live Arcade in 2010. Interplay announced Earthworm Jim 4 in 2008, with little to no information has been surfaced until May 2019 and August 2020. History of the Earthworm Jimmies. Playmates Toys, finding success with the license for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, wanted to start their own franchise. Inspired by the success of Sonic the Hedgehog series and the Sonic the Hedgehog and Sonic the Hedgehog 2, they decided that they wanted to start the franchise as a video game, a rare approach at the time. From there, the game design actually started with creator Doug TenNapel with a simple sketch of an earthworm that he presented to Shiny Entertainment. Impressing enough, David Perry and the rest of Shiny bought the rights to Earthworm Jim from TenNapel and started developing the game. From there, TenNapel would work on doing the game design, creating level ideas and voicing Jim's character, while Perry and the other programmers created other characters and game mechanics. The game's crazy atmosphere, world, and characters were due to the fact that the company had previously always been restricted to doing licensed games, like 7-Up Cool Spot, where they had to conform to the other company's presets limitations. In that respect, the game was actually created as a satire of platform video games at the time. For instance, Princess What's Her Name, these are direct quotes, was a parody of how so many video games had throwaway female characters that exist only to be saved from danger. The resulting game would be the original Earthworm Jim. The game would play as a 2D side-scrolling platformer with elements of a run-and-gun game as well. The player controls Jim and must maneuver him through the level while avoiding obstacles and enemies. The player can use Jim's gun as a method of shooting enemies or his head or whip for whipping enemies. The whip move also allows the player to grab a hold of and swing from certain hooks in the game. Some levels have additional requirements beyond merely getting to the end of the level. For example, the level For Pete's Sake involves making sure the computer-controlled HuskeyPuppy character gets through the level unharmed, which is accomplished by whipping him to make him jump over pits and defeating enemies before they can damage him. Failure to do so results in Peter lashing out at Jim, taking health away from him. The developers also created a wide variety of colorful villains for the game as well, including Psycrow, Queen Slug for a butt, Evil the Cat, Bob the Killer, Goldfish, and Major Mucus, and Professor Monkey for a head. The game was very well received on both the Genesis and the Super NES. It was awarded Best Genesis Game of 1994 by Electronic Gaming Monthly and was rated the 114th best game made on a Nintendo system in Nintendo's Power Top 200 Games list. The game was noted for its fluid animation, featuring a hand-drawn style that was unusual for 16-bit releases. A special version of Earthworm Jim, The Great Earthworm Jim Race, was broadcasted in 1995 for the Sega Channel. The game featured an increase in difficulty level and a secret room which, when reached by the first 200 players, would display a password and a toll-free telephone number. Those that called the number were awarded special prizes, such as a book, action figures, as part of Jim's shortly-lived toy line from Playmate Toys. Shortly afterwards, the same development team started work on a sequel. Let me take a sip of my coffee while we go into the sequels. Then we had Earthworm Jim 2. The premise of the sequel was largely the same as the original. Travels through the levels in order to save Princess What's Her Name and defeat the game's numerous enemies, namely Psychro. While the majority of the levels was still based on run and gun and platform game elements, separate levels incorporate different gameplay elements as well. Some levels, such as the opening level, Anything But Tangerines, and the game's 8 level, Level 8, play largely the same as the original Earthworm Jim, with the exception of there being a larger variety of moves at the player's disposal. For instance, there were more types of guns to use once found in a level, such as the auto-aiming gun or the brick wall gun, which takes out every enemy visible on the screen. Additionally, Jim's friend Snot travels with him and can use the stick and swing to other slimy green surfaces or as a parachute upon jumping. Other levels stray much further from this formula. In the third level, the Vil People, the player must guide Jim, defenseless in the disguise of a blind cave salamander, through international passages, while avoiding exploding sheep and hazard embedded in the floor and walls. The latter part of the level suddenly switches to a game show trivia format, where the player then has to answer nonsensical multiple choice questions that commonly have no logical correct answer. Another level applied titled Inflated Head has Jim's head inflated like a balloon, and the player must control Jim as he floats upward, avoiding touching sharp objects, which could cause him to fall back down to the start of the level. Yet another plays as an isometric shooter with Jim again on his pocket rocket, where a balloon with a bomb must be directed to the end of the level and defended from enemies. The last level of the game is not a typical boss fight, but rather a race against Psychro through an obstacle course to get to Princess What's Her Name. Earthworm Jim 2 was also well received on the Genesis and Super NES, with some reviewers such as IGN and GameZone declaring it as better overall than the original. The game's humor, innovative gameplay, and minigame style levels spread throughout the game was also held in high regard as a welcome change from the linear gameplay common at the time. Although some reviewers had mixed reactions to some of the various different gameplay mechanics, however, the game was later ported to the more advanced PlayStation and Sega Saturn systems, and those versions were generally criticized more due to not having any significant improvements despite the more powerful hardware. Then we had Earthworm Jim 3D. Shortly after the release of Earthworm Jim 2, its original developer, Shiny Entertainment, was bought by Interplay Entertainment, and then put to work on other projects, most notably the PlayStation platformer Wild 9 for 3 years. Subsequently, the franchise was given to VIS Entertainment, and it was decided that, like many platform game series at the time, Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, etc., the gameplay would transition from 2D to 3D. Although development commenced shortly after Earthworm Jim 2, a lengthy 3-year development cycle lent itself to the occasional belief that the project was destined to become vaporware. Consequently, numerous problems and errors arose from this extended development cycle. One hurdle early on was the necessity to redesign the characters from side-scrolling 2D to free-roaming 3D. While the frame rate and animations was still causing issues with the game development, more than 70% complete. Error-wise, much of the content shown in previews and promotional material was either graphically different or removed from the final game. While the game's final packaging depicts Evil the Cat as the boss of the Fear level, Professor Monkey for a Head became the actual in-game level boss. Also, many locations displayed in early versions of the game, such as the level set in a house where Jim is ant-sized, or the non-existing in the released copy. Further compounding these issues, the game was loosely based on the Earthworm Jim TV series, reportedly Evil Jim, which is Earthworm Jim's evil twin from the cartoon series, was supposed to be part of the game, but early screenshots and footage showcased Jim riding his pocket rocket with a fuel meter in races and other missions, as well as snowboarding. However, by the time the game was finalized, the series has been off the air for over 3 years, thus hurting the game's promotional tie-ins and relevance to its target audience. Additionally, original series designer David Perry had sold the rights to the franchise. Perry and the original series creator Doug TenNapel were at first involved in the game as minor consultants, but were dismissed for unexplained reasonings. Both expressed that they hated what was done with Earthworm Jim 3D, but legally could not prevent anything from happening. TenNapel said he felt the series was ruined by the game. The game was considered neither a critical nor a commercial success. Many reviewers called the game uninspired, mediocre, and unable to compete with several other similar, more highly reviewed platform games at the time, like Super Mario 64, Rayman 2, or even Banjo-Kazooie. Then we had Earthworm Jim Menace to the Galaxy. A final fourth Earthworm Jim game was released shortly after Earthworm Jim 3D in 1999. It was developed neither by the original team nor the Earthworm Jim 3D team, but by David A. Palmer Productions, and published by Crave Entertainment. The game played similarly to the first two games, but gameplay was greatly simplified, concentrating on exploring levels to collect items rather than the consistently changing gimmicks present in the original two games. Levels typically involve goals such as collecting 100 or more coins to process through levels, and if the player causes Jim to take too much damage, the player must start the level all over again with 0 items collected. The game was poorly received as well, with reviewers complaining about the tedium and how the tediousness of the collecting, and the game lacking the charm and style of the original Earthworm Jim games. Then we had canceled games, and games that just never came out. The series lay dormant for the first half of a decade. Rumors of a new Earthworm Jim game for the PlayStation Portable started around in 2006, referred to as Earthworm Jim blah blah blah, a canceled video game. It was originally believed to be a remake of the original Earthworm Jim due to footage of Jim in a level very reminiscent of the New Junk City level from the first game. The game was formally announced at E3 in 2006 by Atari, who had obtained from Interplay a 5-year license of the right to develop Earthworm Jim games for handheld devices. However, the game was reported to still be made by the members of the original two titles of Earthworm Jim and Earthworm Jim 2, including Shiny Entertainment founder David Perry, Doug TenNapel, Nick Brudi, and Tommy Tallarico. The developers later announced that the game would be mostly new content with elements of earlier games included. Past characters to return to the game included Princess What's-Her-Name and Peter Puppy. The game was to retain the gameplay of the original two titles, playing as a 2D side-scrolling platform game with elements of a run and gun, but now with 3D computer graphics. It would be a two-dimensional gameplay with three-dimensional graphics, much in the vein of Sonic Rivals or Kaluna, Door to Phantomite. I don't know, I probably butchered that. Similar to the original two games, the gameplay consisted of maneuvering Jim through levels through running and jumping, and defeating enemies with a machine gun, and by using his head as a whip. By August 2006, the game was reportedly 80% complete, and many video game journalists had hands-on playable builds of the game, such as GameSpot, Game Radar, and IGN. It was scheduled for an early 2007 release. However, Atari quietly put the game on hold by mid-2007. The game was later reported as canceled due to financial troubles. Financial problems at Atari caused it to sell off its internal development studios, including Shiny Entertainment, which it owned at the time, and ultimately to cease development on all of its game projects, including Earthworm Jim, by the end of 2007. Now we're going to talk about remakes and re-releases and etc. Interplay announced an Earthworm Jim 4 in 2008, but little has surfaced since. Series creator Doug TenNapel later denied work on it and denied that work even started in 2010. However, Interplay referred to the game as still in development as of May 2011. While no new original games was released in the 2000s, the franchise was still in use in the last years of the decade, with the trend of games from the 1990s being re-released digitally. The two original Earthworm Jim games were re-released on platforms such as the Wii, Visual Console, PlayStation Network, and Xbox Live. The original was also ported to the iOS for play on iPhones as well. In 2010, a remake of the original game titled Earthworm Jim HD was released on PlayStation Network for the PlayStation 3 and Xbox Live for Xbox 360. The game was very similar to the original but had redone smooth graphics and new multiplayer exclusive levels. In 2018, Earthworm Jim HD was removed from the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live. In 2019, a new game was announced as an exclusive release for Intellivision Amico that will be developed by the original team from the 1990s. The game is set to be released as a launch title for the Amico in 2021, but there's nothing confirming or even showing that it's coming out. Earthworm Jim is included on the NA and PAL version of the Sega Genesis Mini, which was released in September 19th, 2019. Other media that Earthworm Jim expired. Earthworm Jim also started as a fighter on Interplay's Nintendo 64 title, Clay Fighter 63, 1/3 in 1997. And the blockbuster rental title Clay Fighter 63 1/3 Sculptor's Cut in 1998. In the original, Jim was a default character. However, in the Sculptor's Cut, he was required to be unlocked. Also in the game, he and Boogerman had a strong rivalry between one another. A line of Earthworm Jim toys and action figures was released in the late 1995s. In 1995, Marvel Comics published a 3-issue comic based on the character, And then in May 2019, Doug TenNapel raised money through Indiegogo to self-publish a new Earthworm Jim graphic novel called Launch the Cow. The comic book successfully raised more than $100,000 in its first 24 hours on Indiegogo and nearly $900,000 over the course of its crowdfunding campaign. A crowdfunding campaign for a second new comic book, Earthworm Jim 2, Fight the Fish, was announced in August 2020, and this even eclipsed the $100,000 threshold in the first day. Shiny has also made references to Earthworm Jim in its later titles. Their game Sacrifice features an Earthworm-like god of Earth called James, and there were additional references in the game MDK. Earthworm Jim also appears as a secret character in the first Battle Arena Todyishin game for PC. Television series of Earthworm Jim, Universal Cartoon Studios made an animated series based on the franchise, and it ran for 23 episodes and 2 seasons from 1995 to 1996 on the Kids WB programming block on the WB television network. The show maintains much of the absurd and surreal humor of the original games, as well as introducing its own features. Most of the episodes revolve around one of Jim's many enemies trying to reclaim the super suit or otherwise cause mayhem throughout the galaxy. Actor Dan Castellaneta, known for various voice acting characters of The Simpsons, including its main protagonist Homer Simpson, voiced Jim in the animated series. Let's talk about the legacy and the reception of Earthworm Jim. The original 2 Earthworm Jim games of the series has been praised for their detailed graphics, well-developed platforming, and wacky humor. The original game was received very well, being rated the 114th best game made on the Nintendo system in Nintendo Power's Top 200 Games list. Earthworm Jim 2 was also received very well. Both were better received than many of the other products that Interplay was working on and around the same time, such as Boogerman, which was criticized as being pretentious, disgusting, and patronizing, and Cool Spot, a project Perry and Talrico worked on, which was criticized for having a lack of personality. The music from Earthworm Jim has been praised, with music from Earthworm Jim 2 being included in Game Central's Best of the Best CD complication of video game music, and has also been requested at concerts where game composer Tommy Talrico has had his music performed. The first 2 games were compiled into a package called Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, The Whole Can of Worms for the PC. Next Generation reviewed the package, rating it 4 out of 5, and stated that this is what the PC really needs sometimes. A nice, fast action game that will distract the player from the more mundane pursuits of word processing or data entry, without requiring the commitment of a huge RPG or strategy title. Earthworm Jim 3D started a downward trend for the series, popularity being considered neither a critical or non-commercial success, with many reviewers claiming that the game was uninspired, mediocre, and unable to compete with many other similar, higher-reviewed platform games at the time, such as Super Mario 64, Rayman 2, or Banjo-Kazooie. Earthworm Jim Menace 2, The Galaxy, was even more poorly received. Menace of the Galaxy, with reviewers claiming that it lost the charm of what made the original games good, and it pretty much killed the series off. The character Earthworm Jim has been recognized as one of the greatest animal protagonists in video game history, and then in July 2020, Mega Polynotrus Toys announced a partnership with Interplay to release a line of 6 action figures based on the game. And there you have the mini documentation series of Earthworm Jim in the Forgotten series, episode 9. Boy! What do you think about Earthworm Jim? Earthworm Jim is a game that hits home for me, that I played as a kid, cherished it, loved it. I never actually beat the game, though, because it was just so hard, and I was a kid, and I didn't really beat games as a kid. But now I know I could fire it up at any time and play through it if I really want that nostalgia, hot racing, pumping blood action feeling. Do you think Earthworm Jim should come back? Do you think he would survive in this climate? On a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, or on a PC, or all 3 platforms, and Earthworm Jim 4 and Earthworm Jim 5, completely 3D, made with Unreal Engine. Let me know in the comments below if you think Earthworm Jim would survive in this climate. But make sure you stay up to date with all the latest in gaming tech news and reviews. Smash that like, and as always, subscribe. God bless and peace.